Hello and welcome to the scientific suggestion of soul growth and ascension. This is Jayanne with Jayanne Healing. We're going to talk about this as part of my science series on energetic healing. This is available for free on the member website if you are a member. And I go all into the details of how the scientific underpinnings of how energy healing works, why it works, and so that way you can stop worrying about the science of it and just accept the fact that you're allowed to heal yourself. So I'm Jayanne, and I'm very excited about this one. Who am I? Jayanne, I'm intuitive healer. I've been doing this since 2015 when I was given a divine download of ways to heal people. I have a BS in biology from the University of Virginia, a materials science minor, and this becomes relevant, you'll see soon. Not just sitting here going, oh, I'm so great. I also have insurance industry experience, and I got into insurance because it's a financial healing modality. It heals cars, it heals, it makes your house whole again if somebody has a fire. And in the case of life insurance, it provides income to a family so that way they're having the impact is the grief, and all of that is, yes, horrible, but they're not having a financial impact, which also will become very relevant later on in this episode. I personally have a blended family. We have 4 kids together, ages 1 through 11. And I am spiritually and scientifically curious. So whether it's, I don't believe in dogma on either side. I want to see data, and I want to see real results, and I want to see what's working for people. I'm not here to focus on dogma. All right, so let's jump right into it. The first thing we're going to talk about today is aging. Now, when I was at University of Virginia, I took a class in the biology of aging. And the question is, why do we age? What's the process of aging and all of that? So here's what I learned about aging. We talk about aging as a corrosive process. So, there's this focus on antioxidants and getting all of your vitamin C because it's a powerful antioxidant, and matching that with collagen so that way the collagen can rebuild and rebuild and rebuild. We also have talked about telomere loss and protective turmeric studies, right? If you've ever been in the health space, there's this huge obsession with turmeric and aging and turmeric and inflammation. And the biggest piece of the aging is that at the end of your DNA, you have little bits that just when they get replicated, just fall off at the end because it can't add it. And so the telomeres, the end parts, get shorter and shorter and shorter, and into the once you become old enough because you've replicated enough, then you can lose actual data. And so that's what the big fear is with loss of telomeres. And there's a lot of studies on turmeric and why that can help you keep your telomeres longer. Smoke, smog, and environmental insults. So you talked about, all kinds of stuff like that being aging, but this is all corrosive stuff, right? Loss, little bits of it at a time. So removing until you have nothing left, or the person just kind of crumbles apart, right? So this is my material science nerdiness here. This is a tensile process, okay? And this is a stress strain curve. So, and just follow, like, you just accept this one because we're going to bring it all together later. But this machine here, you put a little tiny piece of metal, which is like right here in the middle, and it pulls and it pulls and it pulls and it pulls. And it measures the amount of pull that is actively being done to the amount of pull that the metal is feeling. And that's called stress versus strain. So how much strain is, they're measuring the strain inside the metal. And what happens in a metal is that it fits together certain way, right? Like it sits perfectly. It's called its crystal structure. And if you've ever tried to put a bunch of ball bearings in a small container, you see that they end up in certain layers, and that, you know, they're going to fit into the layers a certain way. That's how a crystal structure works. And the more regular the crystal structure is, the more pure the metal is. So they take a pure metal, it has a very, very integrated crystal structure, and they stick it in this machine and they see what happens, right? They measure this. And you have this curve that ends up with every single metal, it behaves this way. It goes up and up and up and up. So the stress that it's experiencing is, I'm sorry, the strain it experiences is linear with the stress it's experiencing. Then at a certain point, it flattens out and even goes down a little bit. Now this is weird, right? Like if you are loading something with stress and it's decided it's going to not be stressed, how does that happen? Okay, so that's an interesting point. And then eventually it takes over and it gets higher and higher until it gets to this point here at the very top. And this is important because once it hits this point, it starts doing what's called necking, which means it gets thinner and thinner. Like if you have a piece of silly putty, if you're a child of the 80s and 90s, silly putty was a big deal. And when you pull it, it's pull, 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 pull. And then at some point it gets skinnier before it just kind of pulls off like taffy, right? And that's called necking. So when it gets to that point, it goes down, but really it should be going up because the in the relative strain to the diameter will be going getting smaller. So it's actually increasing per the diameter of the relative, but that's hard to measure. So the way that they just go, well, technically this is a parabola up, but it creates this because you have the confounding factor of this skinnier and skinnier piece. So that's how tensile processes work. If that makes sense, we're going to move on, and we'll come back to this in a second. Okay, this is mortality tables. And as somebody who's in life insurance, this is something that we deal with every single day. And this is the probability of somebody passing away at a certain age, given the fact that they were born on a certain year. So this was people who were born, this was 1999. So this was, so you can do it one of two ways. If you did a cohort, right, where you go all the babies born in 1901, well, you know, what did that look like? Or you can do it by year and go how in 1 year. So this was 1999 data. This was starting like, so this is the number of people who passed away in the US by age. So this person was 109, so they were born in 1900. Or no, they were born in 1890. Holy goodness. And there were like a couple of people at 109. And so this line on the bottom is females, and this line on the top is male. So if we don't include this, because this is babies, right? Right here at age 13 is the lowest point of mortality across the board. That's typical. 13 is the lowest point. There's a lot of studies about age 13 and figuring out why that's the lowest point and what can we do to be 13 again, right? And then we have this part here, but does this not look very similar to this here? And then we have this. This is female, so it flattens way out. Way out. And then up here it flattens out significantly. So this is wild to say there's a similarity here. It goes straight up and then flattens out. And then there is a point where it actually skyrockets, like right around here, which if this were relative to the diameter, it would behave the same way. So what I truly believe is aging is a tensile process, not a corrosive process. So you take your antioxidants and that slows aging, but it doesn't make it go away, right? So if aging is a tensile process, what is doing the pulling? Oh, and sorry, I gotta go back here real quick. This is the data on mice. This is not mortality data. They do, and this is kind of morbid and gross and weird, but what aging scientists do when they are looking at aging in animal models is they take the tails of an animal. So it's either, they originally I think started with possums in the 70s, and then some mice is just a better genetic model because we know everything about the mouse, right? So they take the tail and they literally do the same process as this machine. They pull the tail to see how old they are, to see what kind of aging they're doing. So this to me says aging is absolutely a tensile process. Like life and death is just a tensile process. It's just a process of pulling. It's not a process of just dissipating. So what is doing the pulling, right? And that's the big question, like, why are we here? Is it spark of life, soul, spirit? If it's soul, and animals are also on this line of, because their population data behaves very similar to ours, do they have souls? Is that implied here? And so there's a lot to be learned here. But my current conclusion is just the spark and light of life is just pulling us through the growth of the physical body. And then at adulthood, it pulls us to growth of the emotional body, the spiritual body, and consciousness. And the stress of this and in humans is absolutely soul, right? Like if we're going to question about what's going on with animals, like I can't speak to that. I'm not an animal specialist. I'm not an animal energy healer. I'm sure there's lots of people who are good at that. But the stress of a soul's growth is a lot on a body. So, and then death occurs because we have completed the amount of growth that we have intended for this incarnation. This is my working hypothesis, and so far it seems to be working pretty well. It's a really good model for why energy healing works. So if we're going to make this assumption that soul and light and divine energy is pulling us to grow our emotional body and our subtle bodies after we hit physical maturity, then what is it we're supposed to learn? How are we supposed to do this? Okay. As an aside, why do we care about antioxidants and telomeres? Just a corroded metal will break easier than an intact metal. Antioxidants help our body stay healthy through this pulling process. Now, this is what I care about the most. When we clear emotional and energetic resistance, we are like letting go of this growth process. And we are actually better at this growth process because we are clearing these emotional and energetic resistances. So if you think about emotional and energetic resistances as like a stop for growth, and not a total stop, but like just a little tiny stop, but this other part over here of you isn't going to grow as strongly, and eventually you can't grow anymore and it'll just break, right? So let's go back to metals, because I think this will help you. If you think about forging metal, so when you've got a blacksmith and they're pounding it, they're creating distortions inside the metal. And when we go back, all the way back here, right? This is distortions inside the metal. You're creating stress inside the metal. And that's what they're doing when they're pounding away at this thing. So they're actually making it stronger by involving these distortions. That's why we have this saying of what doesn't kill me makes me stronger, because we have these distortions and they actually do kind of help us. Okay, but there's a point where it doesn't help us anymore. So you want to be in the sweet spot of this stress strain curve. And blacksmiths who are very good at what they do know by feeling, they know by the hammer that they've hit that point where they're going to have to stop hitting it. They can't add any more tension in there, because too many distortions will cause it to break, and then you can't get it back from there. And the way to clear the distortions is they stick it back in the fire and it just basically melts out the distortions. That's exactly how energy healing works. We're able to clear out these distortions in your energetic body, so that way you can continue to build whatever it is you're building. Because if you just try to force yourself to change, then you're going to just be smashing this hammer, smash, 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 create all these distortions, and you will just break yourself. And how many times can you break yourself before you finally go, maybe I just need to like give myself a minute and do this. This is why cheat days are good. This is why, because what you're doing is putting the iron back in the fire and clearing out the distortions. And that's what energetic processing is. And I literally just said all that. So life is full of tensions and difficulty, which causes emotional and energetic body distortions. And we call these distortions trauma. That's the key. Clearing trauma, clearing trauma, clearing trauma, clearing trauma, right? Like that's the big thing we talk about, is clearing trauma. The only way to do that is through energy work, whether it's somebody else doing it with you and teaching you how to do it, or you just doing it on yourself. If it's like taking a bath, that's why we call this self-care. If a bath doesn't help you clear this out, that's not gonna, then don't do that, right? And distortions in the energetic body can cause problems in the physical body too, because the energetic body is upstream from the physical body. Now, it is a feedback loop too, so just keep that in mind. If you're like, oh, you can't just sit around and be like, oh, I'm just going to energy heal myself to skinniness. There's action that needs to be taken. But if you don't accept the fact that this first thing needs to happen too, then you're never going to be successful. Phew. Okay, so using energy healing will clear these distortions, whether it's whatever it is you do for healing. It'll clear resistances, it'll clear stressors, it'll put the energetic crystal structure back to its low stress reset. Okay, so this is not a course on how to live to be 100. It's not a course on how to, Methuselah it up. But if you clear your stressors, you can be more successful in the long term. So this is Jan, and we just had a long conversation about how awesome it is to do energy healing and why it is, scientifically supported, and the comparison between metallurgy and energy healing and how aging fits into all of this. I loved it, and please let me know your thoughts. Have a great day.